What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 4. Sleepers and studs.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to give you a sleeper pick and my favorite stud at each position.
And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Okay guys, NFL Week 4. Let's take a look at the quarterback position. So my quarterback stud is Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills, playing the Baltimore Ravens, who have the absolute worst defense overall. They give up the second most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Josh Allen has averaged 32.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.3 rush attempts per game. He's going to be about 13% owned, projected at 26.3 fantasy points. Here in Week 4, he's $8,400 DraftKings salary, $500 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 51 points scored in this game, with the Buffalo Bills favored by 3. So Josh Allen has scored 31, 33, and 34 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He got 8, 1, and 10 rush attempts in those games. Been absolutely crushing it this year. Now he's got a fantastic matchup in what Vegas thinks is going to be a high-scoring game. So I like Josh Allen here versus the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, my sleeper pick at the quarterback position is Russell Wilson from the Denver Broncos, playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who have the 8th worst defense overall. They give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, he's only averaged 14 fantasy points per game on the season. He's getting an average of 3 rush attempts per game. Only going to be about 2% owned, but he's projected at 18.1 fantasy points here in Week 4. And he's only $6,700 DraftKings salary, $400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, with the Broncos trailing by 2.5. Now, Russell Wilson has scored 9, 12, and 21 fantasy points in the last 3 games, and he got 6, 2, and 1 rush attempt in those games. So Russell Wilson, I think this is a player who's going to start to do better each and every week as he gets more comfortable with his wide receivers and his tight ends. He's got some capable wide receivers on his team, and he's got some rushing upside, and he has a fantastic matchup this week. So I think he can put up 20 plus fantasy points in this matchup. So I like Russell Wilson here versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. My running back stud is Saquon Barkley from the New York Giants, playing the Chicago Bears, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They give up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Saquon Barkley has averaged 23.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 17.7 rush attempts per game and 5 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 86% of the snaps, going to be about 18% owned, projected at 20.2 fantasy points here in Week 4. He's $8,000 DraftKings salary, $100 more on FanDuel. So I love that FanDuel price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 39.5 points scored in this game, with the Giants favored by 2.5. So Saquon Barkley has scored 23, 12, and 36 fantasy points in the last 3 games, up of 14, 21, and 18 rush attempts on top of 4, 4, and 7 pass targets. So Saquon Barkley is the offense for the New York Giants. Looks like he is back in full force after those couple of years of injury-riddled seasons. So he's got a good matchup here as well. So I like Saquon Barkley here versus the Chicago Bears.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, my sleeper pick at the running back position. Now remember, David Montgomery is going to be out, so that opens up the door for Khalil Herbert from the Chicago Bears playing the New York Giants, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Khalil Herbert has averaged 16.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 11 rush attempts per game and 1.3 pass targets per game. Now, that's pretty decent volume considering that David Montgomery is their lead back, and he got the majority of those touches last week when Montgomery went down. So he's going to be about 4% owned, projected at 12.8 fantasy points here in week 4. He's $5,700 DraftKings salary, $1,500 more on FanDuel. So he's underpriced here, being the #1 running back going into this game versus the Giants. And Khalil Herbert, last week after Montgomery went down, he scored 34 fantasy points off of 20 rush attempts and 2 pass targets. So I like Khalil Herbert here versus the New York Giants. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. So my wide receiver stud, I mean, it's got to be Stephon Diggs here, but that's just the obvious play. He's got a fantastic matchup versus the Baltimore Ravens, who have the worst defense overall and give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. So if you can find the salary to stack Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, I think that's going to be a pretty good play, but it will eat up a lot of your salary, so it's going to be a hard duo to fit in. So if you want to save some salary here, another stud that I like is Michael Pittman Jr. from the Indianapolis Colts, playing the Tennessee Titans, who have the 4th worst defense overall. They give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Michael Pittman Jr. has averaged 22.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 11 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 74% of the snaps, gonna be about 10% owned, projected at 17 fantasy points here in week 4. He's $7,200 DraftKings salary, $300 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 43 points scored in this game, with the Colts favored by 3.5. So Michael Pittman Jr., he played 2 out of the 3 games this season, and in those games he scored 15 and 30 fantasy points off of 9 and 13 pass targets. Fully healthy here with a great matchup. So I like Michael Pittman Jr. here versus the Tennessee Titans. Okay, my sleeper pick at the wide receiver position is Noah Brown from the Dallas Cowboys, playing the Washington Commanders, who have the 2nd worst defense overall. They give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Noah Brown has averaged 14.1 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 85% of the snaps, only going to be about 2% owned, projected at 10.3 fantasy points here in week 4. He's 4,900 DraftKings salary, 700 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 41.5 points scored in this game, with the Cowboys favored by 3.5. So Noah Brown has scored 10, 20, and 12 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 7, 5, and 9 pass targets. So he's getting good volume and he's been productive each and every week in a fantastic matchup. Salary still super low, ownership way too low here. So I like Noah Brown here versus the Washington Commanders.
Real quick guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, moving on to the tight end position. The stud on the slate is Mark Andrews from the Baltimore Ravens, playing the Buffalo Bills, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing tight ends, but Mark Andrews has averaged 22.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 10.3 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 86% of the snaps, going to be about 12% owned, projected at 17.5 fantasy points here in week 4. He's 7,100 DraftKings salary, 1,300 more on FanDuel. Now Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. 51 points scored in this game, with the Ravens trailing by 3. So Mark Andrews has scored 29, 29, and 10 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 13, 11, and 7 pass targets. So he's getting a ton of volume. Even though it's not a great matchup here, I think he's a good run back player if you're going to play Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs. I think you could run it back with Mark Andrews, who should get a bunch of pass targets here, and he's been putting up numbers each and every week. So I like Mark Andrews here versus the Buffalo Bills. Okay, my sleeper pick at the tight end position is Tyler Conklin from the New York Jets, playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing tight ends. Tyler Conklin has averaged 12.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 8 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 90% of the snaps, only going to be about 2% owned, projected at 8.5 fantasy points here in week 4. He's only 3,600 DraftKings salary, 1,800 more on FanDuel, so I love that DraftKings price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 41.5 points scored in this game, with the Jets trailing by 3.5. So Tyler Conklin has scored 16, 10, and 11 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 8, 9, and 7 pass targets. I think his ownership and his salary are way too low. I think this guy's going under the radar for getting an average of 8 pass targets per game and 12.7 fantasy points per game. I think this is a fantastic sleeper pick, so I like Tyler Conklin here versus the Pittsburgh Steelers.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite
player for this NFL slate.
I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again and good luck.